Alright, so this project is really fun because you can use a lot of different kinds of chain. You can kind of get really free-formed with it. You can make everything the same. You can use all different color combinations, whatever you want. These are the ones that I've chosen for the center of the necklace. I cut 1 foot of every piece, and I've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different pieces. You can make as many or as few rows of chain as you want to. And then I also chose, this is what I'm going to be using for the top and the bottom. I did keep them the same kind of chain, and it is different than all of these, but you could definitely make these different than each other. You can make them the same as something else you've used here. It's really personal preference. This is just what I chose to use for mine to kind of make the middle ones pop a little bit more. So again, 1 foot on the top and the bottom piece, and then 1 foot on everything that you want to include in the middle. And then I did go ahead and lay everything out in a pattern, so that way I can kind of just string them along as I wanted to go. This is about the amount of spacing that I'm going to use, and that puts me right about 6 inches. So I'm going to go gather up about 6 or 7 inches worth of beads that I'm going to use to run along both of these sides. Alright, so I've already gathered up all of my beads and laid them out into a pattern that I like. You're not going to be putting any chain on top of the top bead or below the bottom bead. You're going to be putting it in between these little gaps here. So one piece of chain is going to go in between each one. And you can stack multiple beads between here and feel free to use caps and daisy spacers and whatever you want to, whatever assortment of beads you want to. Just keep in mind that the taller you make this section, the farther apart the gaps in the chain are going to be. So I had 10 pieces of chain, so I laid out 10 gaps. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one has 2 beads in it. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this one has 2 beads in it as well. And I did not plan on putting any chain after the bottom or before the first one. So go ahead and take a minute, figure out your chains and your beads, and then we can go ahead and put it together. Alright, so this project is actually pretty simple. We're going to use a piece of stringing wire for each side, so one for the side and one for the side. You want to make them about 1.5 feet each. That should give you plenty to tie off on both ends. And we're going to use, since we're using stringing wire, we use the crimp beads and the wire guardians to connect it to our top and bottom chains. And if you picked a chain that's kind of thick like mine, you're going to need to put a jump ring on here because the wire guardian is not going to go around this thick link of chain. So all I'm going to do now real quick is just take some jump rings and attach one to each end of my top and bottom chain. Okay, that way I can connect it to the ring instead and it'll fit on there much easier. Okay, so one on both sides of my top and bottom chain. Make sure it's closed up really well. And we'll do the same thing for the other link of chain. Okay, so 4 jump rings, 1 on each end of 2 strands. Okay, so once you've got your jump rings on there, we are going to connect the stringing wire to the ring using crimps and wire guards. If you've never done this before, it's pretty simple. This little one is a crimp bead. We're just going to slide it on like it was the next bead in line, and it's literally just a tiny little metal bead that we're going to end up smashing in a few minutes to connect everything. And then this wire guardian is shaped like a horseshoe, and if you look at the open end of it, it has 2 little holes like tubes. And then they follow along the side and it kind of cuts off halfway around and makes a track for the wire to lay in. So what I'm going to do is with the legs pointing down, I'm going to go through one side, it shoots right out the other side, that's okay. Bend it down and go back down the other side. Okay. Alright, that's what we're going for. Okay, so we're going to take the little tail, don't lose your crimp bead here, and put it through our ring and just pop that little ring into the wire guard. You want it to sit in the middle of that U shape. Okay, use your fingers and just kind of squeeze it together. You want the little legs of that wire guardian to touch. It's perfect. And then take your crimp bead and slide it over the little short tail. So now it's covering both of them. So that way when I take a pair of flats and smash it, it will bind them together. So just make sure there's no slack. You don't want any string coming out here or between here where the crimp and the wire guard is. And I'm just going to take my little pointy flats and I'm going to smash just the crimp bead Okay, nice and flat. And then I'm going to stick it one blade in the middle and smash one side of the wire guardian, make it flat, and then move the other side and smash the other side. So now I've got 3 points that are holding this together so it's nice and strong. Okay, our chains are the same length, so it doesn't matter which one that I start with. So I'm going to slide on my first bead and just make sure it goes over both the tails. At this point we can just trim off the excess. Going through one decent sized bead is good enough. So whatever your top section of bead is, that's going to be good enough. And then I'm going to slide on my top chain. All I'm going to do is go through the first link in the chain. Okay, and then my next bead or bead section, whatever you want to string on, do them all at once if it's a whole section of beads. Okay, I'm going to go through the last link again. Okay, and another bead, and the last link. I skipped a little bead. Okay, take that back off. All right, little gold bead. These, I wanted to put them together. So just string them both on at the same time. And then the last link of chain. And then next bead, the next type of chain. This one has a bigger link on it, so you just want to make sure that whatever you put next to it, it's a good stopper for it. If I had put it next to this little gold bead, it would go over and just be moving back and forth here. So this is a decent size for it, so that one worked out well. Okay, and then gold bead and black bead. And I just have kind of an assortment of onyx and smoky quartz here with the gold. I think they're a really pretty combo. And I'm always going through the last link of chain. If something happens and you realize that you messed up and you went through like the second to last link, just cut that first link off later. It'll be all right. If you mess up your pile, use this other one to compare to, so that way you know what's going on, so you don't get confused. So I'm just stringing every other one, beads and then chain. Okay. And when I hold it up, I can kind of see I've got beads with chain between each one. So that's going to give me a really good kind of idea of what it's going to look like. Okay. All right, so this second side is now ready to be tied off. So we're going to do the same thing. We've got plenty of wire here. Crimp bead first, then your wire guard in one side, out the other. And then using that other piece of ending chain, we're going to go through our last little jump ring, pull it into our little horseshoe so it sits in the middle, start pulling some of the slack out so we can see what we're doing. Okay. And then we're going to go back through the crimp bead and back through the wire guardian. Okay, that little tail is coming out right between the first bead and the link of chain, and just pull that long tail to pull all the slack out. Okay, so you may want to lift it up and double check. You don't want gaps way down here while you're working on this side and not notice. So make sure you got the slack out of the whole thing. Okay, doesn't have to be super tight because you don't want it kinky, but you don't want any gaps in string either. Okay, remember to squeeze those little legs together. Gets a lot closer, looks a lot nicer. Okay. And then using your flats, we're going to smash just the crimp bead and then your wire guard one side at a time. And then we're going to trim the excess. Don't cut anything important. Pay attention to what you're cutting before you do it. Okay. All right, perfect. Now we're going to do the second side. So our second piece of string, it was 1.5 feet, remember. We're going to attach it with the crimp and the wire guards. Same process we did before. And we're going to attach it to either side, it doesn't matter. One of those jump rings that we attached. So make sure you just make sure that you're getting on one of your top or bottom strands and not one of your ones that goes across the middle. Okay. Slide it close so that way we don't have any gaps. And then smash and smash. All right, so you can kind of compare to the side that you already did. Gonna have to kind of work with it a little bit so it doesn't get all tangled. Okay, so you can see this is my top chain, and so I'm starting with the little bead. So I'm working my way from the bottom to the top this time. Okay, so that'll help you kind of see which one you're doing. So I'm going to string on the little bead that goes on the bottom, and I am going to go ahead and string it over the tail just to kind of reinforce it a little bit. I'm going to cut off my excess short string. Don't cut the long one or you'll be doing this part again. Okay. And then, so the next chain, you want to string on the opposite length of it, but you need to kind of take a minute and just make sure that it's not getting all twisted. Because once we put it in there, it's kind of done. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay, nice and straight, not all twisted. So I'm going to put that in. Hello. And then my next bead, and I had a section of 2, so make sure you're comparing to that other finished side so that way you don't mess up. Okay, and if you want, you can kind of see how we're doing, but that's generally right. That's what we're going for. Okay, so my second chain, I'm going to pull it from the finished side over here. This little one would not be nearly as noticeable if I twisted it a little bit, which is nice, but I am just going to go ahead and double check, kind of do the best I can. Doesn't have to be perfect. You know, 1 or 2 little twists is not going to be the end of the world. Probably nobody would notice, but we're going to do our best work anyhow. Okay, and then my next one is the little round faceted. And we've got the black chain. And the big chains may feel a little bit more awkward. You'll notice them twisting more, but those are the ones that would show up more. So just take a minute and, you know, get it right. Do the best you can. And just remember, keep checking back with your finished side so that way you make sure that you don't mess up, so especially if you have beads that are stacked, because you don't want to accidentally only do one at a time. Okay. It's a really fun way to do a project to use up all the rest of your pieces. If you just have a bunch of scraps of chain, or if you have like lots of single beads. You can do different patterns on the right and the left, but you don't want one of your chain to start up here and then the other side of it to be crooked. You want them to be the same height, so that way your little chains go straight across. Keep forgetting this little guy. Forgot it on the other side too. And looks like this is the last one. And since the measurements are the same for the front and the back piece, look how pretty it already is. Either side could be the top. You can flip it, it doesn't matter. You just need to have one going around your head and one will be hanging on the bottom. So it doesn't matter which side you have as the front or the back, but this is cool already. Okay, let's go ahead and close it up. So, crimson wire guards, just like we did before. And again, you need to kind of straighten it out a little bit. You don't want it to be totally crazy. It's pretty good. Alright, squeeze the little legs together so that way it closes up much nicer for you. And you're going to go back through your crimp and your first bead. And then just go ahead and pull that slack out. Okay. Just double check, make sure we didn't mess anything up. Alright, so I'm just kind of checking the beads, make sure they match up all the way across. It looks pretty good. And nothing is like, you know, terribly twisted or on the wrong side. These rotate here, so you can always just pull them towards the inside. So even if your chains seem like they're on the outside, it'll be okay. And then crimp your crimp and your wire guard one side at a time and cut. Don't cut the long one or then we gotta start over. Alrighty, so when you wear it, you can just lift up this back one and throw it over your head, or if you want to, you can always break it in the middle and add a clasp in there using jump rings, whatever you prefer. But it's a really cool piece, and we'll show you a picture of what the finished one looks like on our mannequin because it's a little easier to see there.